I got married to Sarah right after finishing college. I was right there with her as she went from being an unknown new lawyer to a respected judge in the city. 2 years later, our son, Danny, was born. Danny was very much like Sarah. Quiet, reserved, and we were never that close. This went on until one morning when I accidentally knocked over the 2 mugs that matched theirs. Sarah looked at me, annoyed. "How can you mess up something so simple?" she asked. Danny just stared at the broken pieces on the floor, a rare look of disappointment on his face. "But that was a gift from Mr. Gregg to Mom and me." Suddenly, I just felt exhausted. That night I told Sarah I wanted a divorce. She didn't even look up from her paperwork. "Don't bother trying to fight me on this," she said. "You won't get custody." She sounded completely sure that I would give up for Danny's sake. I just nodded. "Okay, I never wanted it anyway." Sarah's head shot up, a flash of shock crossing her face before she quickly returned to her usual blank expression. "I won't stop you if you want a divorce, but are you sure you've thought this through?" I carried my luggage out to the car, and I saw Danny hiding behind the door, watching me leave. "You're a judge," I said calmly. "You wrote the divorce agreement. Even if I wanted to back out, I couldn't, right?" I added, "I don't want any of our shared assets. Consider it child support for Danny. I'm taking the car." Sarah suddenly grabbed my car door, her voice trembling. "James Cole, if you're divorcing me because I took Greg's case, you don't have to." I tried to pull the door shut, but she held on to it. She took a deep breath, flustered. "I told you, I'm a judge with professional ethics. I have to be responsible for my cases." So, even now, she still thought I was the problem. I met her gaze and challenged her. "Sarah, if you're truly as ethical as you claim to be, why did you wait until I found out before telling me? And why did you accuse me of looking through your things after I did find out?" I had just gone into her study to clean, the same as I always did, and saw the case file by accident. For years, the files she left on her desk were never a secret. But this time, she got furious, yelling at me for not respecting her privacy. Seeing her stay silent, I pushed on. "Ask yourself, Sarah, do you really not have a single selfish reason for all of this?" She was stunned for a moment, then quickly composed herself. "I wasn't feeling well that day, and my attitude toward you was poor, but I apologized later." Apologized? That day, Sarah had screamed at me, and our son, Danny, stood in the doorway, watching everything in the study with a cold expression. "Dad, you don't respect Mom's privacy. Mr. Gregg would never do that." The next morning, before she left with Danny, she tossed one sentence at me. "I'll be home early tonight." That was her so-called apology. And the breakfast I had made for them sat untouched on the clean dining table. Neither of them had taken a single bite. Seeing the lack of understanding on her face, I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. For the past 2 years, I'm the one who's dropped Danny off and picked him up from school every single day. You've never been to a single parent-teacher event, let alone any of his after-school activities. So tell me, Sarah, why are you so eager to do the school run every day now? The yard became completely silent. I had loved Sarah, and Danny was once my whole world. But people get worn out. Hearts can stop caring. The great Judge Sarah, so sharp and convincing in the courtroom, couldn't say a single word in her own defense. "James, these are just small, unimportant things." I closed my eyes, overwhelmed by an indescribable exhaustion. They're all just tiny, small things like grains of sand. But when the whole floor is covered in them, you'd go crazy trying to pick them all up. I had choked down this awful situation for years. Now, I was finally ready to spit it out. As the car slowly pulled out of the driveway, Danny didn't even say, "Dad." And I didn't need to look back at him. Not even after I had given up the chance to study abroad to take care of him, after I had spent whole nights holding him to get him to sleep, completely neglecting my own career, which was going nowhere. Sarah and I had been married for 8 years. Danny came into our lives 6 years ago. Even I found it hard to believe that our seemingly perfect family of 3 had come to this. It all started 6 months ago, with a case Sarah took on. The client was her college first love, Greg. Back then, Sarah was the brilliant, distant scholarship student at the law school, and Greg was the popular business student who chased after her constantly. They walked side by side down the tree-lined paths of campus, living out the kind of love story everyone wished for when they were young. And the deep love I kept hidden in my heart felt like a joke. Later, I heard Greg's parents didn't approve of Sarah's background and caused a huge scene at the law school. I guess some things are just too good to last. They broke up. At the time, I was spending a lot of time in the art studio to deal with my own sadness. And one day, I happened to see Sarah sitting in the classroom next door. She said she really liked my paintings. I was overjoyed, even if she only liked my art. Life went on, and I treasured every moment I got to spend alone with her. But I never dared to show any sign of my feelings, afraid she'd avoid me if she knew I loved her. Cautiously, my crush made me a coward. I had the courage to drink and talk with her, even trying to set her up with other guys so she would forget Greg sooner. But I never had the courage to tell her I liked her. Until our senior year, when I was coming back to campus alone and found her in an alley, being attacked in revenge for a case. The blood on her back had soaked through the simple white dress she always wore. That night in the hospital was long. I leaned close to her ear and whispered everything, telling her carefully how much I liked her. She said yes. We started dating, and eventually we walked down the aisle, but I never expected that 8 years later, Greg would reappear in our lives. What I expected even less was that he would become my son Danny's teacher. Sarah knew about this before I did. The moment Greg saw Danny, he immediately looked up his student file. When Sarah got the call, the man's voice on the other end was full of emotion. No wonder he looked so familiar. He's the son of an old friend. That was why Sarah had insisted on handling the school run every day since Danny started the semester. It wasn't because she felt guilty for neglecting her child. It was because she wanted to see that person every day. I wouldn't have even known if Danny hadn't mentioned it by accident. I worried every day that the two of them would be hungry without breakfast, that eating fast food all the time was unhealthy. It turns out they were rushing off to another man's house to eat with him every morning. Once upon a time, I had dreamed of a life with the 3 of us through all 4 seasons. But the present was no longer the future I had imagined. I bought a new phone and a plane ticket to France. That weekend, a painter I greatly admire was having an exhibition there. For the sake of my wife and son, I hadn't taken a single trip by myself since we got married. Trips with the 3 of us usually left me even more exhausted mentally and physically. I was in charge of planning every detail of the trip, and they were only in charge of complaining. The schedule is so packed. Going on a trip with you is more tiring than my job. What's so great about a temple? You actually believe in that Lovelock nonsense? I wanted to go to the botanical gardens. Why didn't Dad plan for that? Dad won't let me eat anything. I hate Dad the most. Looking back, the answers were all in the details. I spent nearly 2 months on that trip, traveling almost all over France. The evening breeze on the Seine, the poetry of the Tuileries garden, the gentle dusk over Montmartre, the brilliant history held within the Louvre. On busy street corners, the sound of a violin scattered on the wind, like a scene from a movie transitioning slowly and gracefully. Before, my whole world revolved around my wife and son. Now the mountains were just mountains, and the sea was just the sea. When I got back to the hotel, I saw one of my own paintings. A crowd had gathered in front of it, praising it with the most beautiful language. I looked at the vibrant, alive version of myself in the mirror and suddenly felt detached from my failed marriage. Be like a mountain. I must be like a mountain, covered in fragrant grasses and flowers, but also made of the hardest stone. For myself, I will do what I can, and respect what I cannot. As soon as the plane landed, my old phone was flooded with missed calls and messages from Sarah. "Answer the phone, James. What the hell is your problem? Come home and apologize right now and I can still forgive you. Where did you put the gray silk scarf I wore to court last time? Danny has a fever. What medicine do you usually give him? James, what do you mean by not answering your phone? Even if we're divorced, Danny is still your son. You're still legally his father. The doctor said Danny's cough has been hard to treat since he was little. What did you do to manage it? James, I'm going crazy. Where are you?" After getting home, I sent a text. The herbal remedy. I remember the first time I made it for Danny. He was still so obedient. He took it spoonful by spoonful, and his coughing slowly went away. The last time I made it for him, he frowned and swatted the bowl out of my hand. Mr. Gregg said this is all just folk medicine. You're so dumb, Dad. The hot liquid splashed onto my hand, but I just told myself he was a kid and didn't know any better. I brought out another bowl, comforting him through the pain. Danny, you have to trust Dad. Drink this and you'll stop coughing. But he refused, turning and running back to his room. I'm not drinking that garbage. I just stared at his back. Danny acting like this was exactly like Sarah lately when she came home from work events. When I'd bring her the hangover soup I had kept warm for hours, she would push my hand away coldly. I don't drink this stuff. I scrolled up through our chat history. It was a sea of solid green message bubbles from my side. It's Danny's first day of kindergarten. Do you have time to drop him off with me? I bought some really fresh shrimp at the market today. Want to come home for dinner? Still in a meeting? I can bring you something to eat. No matter how busy you are with work, you need to rest. Don't forget to take the vitamins on the table. In the last 2 years, Sarah had sent me fewer messages than she had in the last 2 months, let alone messages she started. There were barely any. Not a minute after I sent the text, Sarah's call came through. Her voice was hoarse, like she hadn't slept well in a long time. James? You finally answered. I'm juggling work and taking care of Danny. You need to come back and help. I put down my paintbrush, trying to keep my voice calm. Sarah, I'm busy too. We're divorced. If you need a nanny, you can hire one. I have my own things to do. What could you possibly be busy with besides me and Danny? Don't you dare tell me you're working! Sarah cut me off, her voice sharp with impatience. I fought back my anger, speaking each word clearly. What I'm busy with is my business and none of yours. And Sarah, you're a judge. You of all people should understand what the word divorce means, right? People get divorced because they can't stand each other anymore. They get divorced because they hope to never see each other again. So, stop bothering me. It's really annoying. I hung up and blocked her number. But I never expected Sarah to be so persistent, calling me from one new number after another. Once, when I picked up, I heard Danny's reluctant voice. Dad, when are you coming back? I was in the middle of signing a contract and answered without thinking. Mom and Dad are divorced. I'm not coming back. If you need something, you can ask your mom first. You're not coming back at all? Danny's voice was suddenly full of surprise. Then can Mr. Gregg be my dad? The phone was suddenly snatched away, and I heard Sarah's panicked voice. "He's just a kid. He doesn't know what he's saying. Don't take it to heart, James." She said my name softly. "Danny is our child. Do you really have to hold on to all this?" I smirked, finding it ridiculously funny. "Sarah, that's because I'm the one who was forced to swallow all the pain, not you. Every time I took the clothes from her hands and smelled another man's cologne on them, I was the one who endured it. Every time I heard the child I raised as my own complain about me again and again because someone else was whispering in his ear, I was still the one who endured it. The mugs I accidentally broke that day were a gift from Greg. It was a set of 3. The last one was on his desk at work. I don't believe for a second that Sarah didn't understand what Greg meant by giving them those mugs. So when both of them turned on me at the same time, all my tolerance became meaningless. The voice on the other end paused for 3 seconds. "Greg, his case is almost over." I curled my lip into a sneer. "What? Should I pop a bottle of champagne for him? Or should I be expecting a wedding invitation?" Once the case was over, other things could begin. "James, how long are you going to keep this up?" Sarah's tone was full of exasperation, as if she were scolding me for being immature. I hung up without a second thought and blocked the new number. The painting on my easel just needed a few finishing touches. Mark showed up while I was making dinner. He's my agent and my best friend since childhood. He walked in with a bottle of champagne to celebrate my escape from hell. "Seriously, a genius painter like you trading his paintbrushes for an apron for that witch? Even Honey shakes his head at it." Years ago, there was a young painter named Cole who shot to fame and then vanished into silence. That was me, James Cole. "Cole?" I lay down on the sofa, propping my head up with a pillow. "Who's Honey?" "A dog I just adopted. My point is, no male on this planet would approve of what you did." The air was quiet. He cleared his throat and suddenly asked, "Are you still dealing with that ungrateful little brat school situation? That private school isn't just about money. The deal was you'd donate 2 paintings." Danny was starting 1st grade in the fall, and Sarah and I had put a lot of effort into his schooling. Sarah had gotten where she was, through education, so she was even more focused on Danny's schooling than most parents. She had her heart set on this private school early on. Sarah had pulled every string she could, but couldn't get him a spot. I couldn't bear to see her stressing about Danny on top of her demanding job, so I had Mark reach out to the headmaster under the guise of donating art and requested a spot for Danny. It worked perfectly. The headmaster shook Mark's hand, overjoyed, promising that if he could get my paintings, he'd take 10 Dannys, let alone 1. Danny's admission was settled just like that. But I didn't want Sarah to know, so I had the headmaster contact a teacher Sarah had previously asked for help. Because of that one spot, Sarah was praised to the skies at the courthouse. Everyone who saw her complimented Judge Sarah on her amazing connections, and Danny became the envy of every parent and child at his preschool. But now, what did you tell them at the time? Mark was casually scrolling through his phone. I said I'd do my best. A shark is a shark. He promised 8/10 of what he could deliver, but made them believe in 12. Those 2 paintings? I sold them for you. I donated the auction proceeds to a charity for underprivileged schools. Bottom line, I wasn't going to let you use them to pave the way for that toxic pair. After all, Danny was a child I had poured my heart and soul into. I still cared about his future. But I didn't have any suitable paintings for the school anymore. Like any stay-at-home husband, I was practically on call 24/7 to take care of them. In the end, I barely even had a chance to pick up a paintbrush. Thank God. Thank God, I could finally be myself again. At 4:00 a.m., a harsh ringtone shattered the silence. It was an unknown number. I answered, trying to stay lucid. Hello, who is this? Sir, it's Sarah's assistant. Laura was drinking with a client until after 3. I was about to take her home, but she said her stomach hurts too much to move. We're at City General Hospital now. Sir, would you be able to come over? The assistant recited the lines stiffly, stumbling a little in the middle, with no conviction at all. Honestly, there's a reason some people stay assistants for so long. I resisted the urge to throw my phone and lowered my voice. As far as I know, I'm not Sarah's emergency contact. What? It was about 6 months ago, I think. Sarah got into a minor car accident on her way to the courthouse. When I rushed to the hospital, a nurse led me to her room. Seeing my panicked expression, she kindly reassured me. Mr. Gregg, your wife is fine. She was just unconscious when she was brought in, so we contacted you. I stopped in my tracks, and I vaguely heard my own voice tremble. Where did you find his number? Sarah's phone had a passcode. She refused to use a fingerprint or facial recognition, saying it wasn't secure. The nurse smiled as if she'd seen it all before. From her emergency contacts, of course. The number you can call without unlocking the phone. The first person to be contacted in a crisis. On Sarah's phone, it was Gregg. And I found out because one of her colleagues called me. That was the first time I ever felt something called disappointment towards Sarah. But how could someone who disappoints you only do it once? I lay back down in bed. Hearing the shuffling sounds on the other end only confirmed my suspicion that a second person was listening. The fact that you could find my number means even you know Sarah's phone password. But I don't. That proves I'm not someone she trusts. So you'd better find someone else. Just as I was about to hang up, Sarah finally dropped the act. She quickly grabbed the phone, her voice full of hurt. James, I drank too much again and I don't feel well. I suddenly remembered the last hangover soup I ever made for her. She said she didn't drink that stuff anymore. And Danny, his cough keeps coming back. I had the nanny make that herbal remedy, but he won't drink it. Sarah! I couldn't suppress the anger inside me and cut her off. You're in a hospital. There are doctors there. Calling me is useless. You're just waking me up. If your son won't drink it, you need to teach him to get used to it, because I'm never coming back to make it for him again. Do you understand? I don't care what you're thinking right now, but let me tell you something. I used to do those things because I wanted to, not because I had to. Divorcing you was a carefully considered decision. There is absolutely no chance of me taking it back. Do you get it, Sarah? There was dead silence on the other end. Just as I was about to hang up, Sarah tried one last time. She lowered her voice, a mix of confusion and resentment. James, after all these years together, can't you just forgive me this one time? I laughed, which somehow calmed me down. Sarah, forgiving someone isn't a one-time thing. It means I have to forgive you every single time I remember what you did. If Sarah had just been mature and let us part ways amicably, I would have respected her for having some dignity. But her constant clinging, her fake affection, and her attempts to paint herself as the good guy in the end were just pathetic. The news of our divorce gradually spread. A number of mutual friends came to talk to me. Some said I had been with her through it all, and just when she finally had everything, I was letting someone else walk in and take it. Others said Sarah still had feelings for me. Otherwise, why would she be trying so hard to get me back? Just then, a message from an unknown number appeared on my phone. It was a picture. In the dim light, 2 people on a bed had their fingers intertwined, holding hands tightly. Even without the ring I had spent so long picking out, I would have recognized those well-manicured hands. and the half-visible faces of Greg and Sarah. Sarah was asleep. Greg was smiling. I casually posted the picture to my social feed. Caption: "See? Once the case is over, they can sleep together in the open." I didn't block anyone from seeing that post. Less than 3 minutes later, another text came from the unknown number. "James, are you insane? Delete that right now." Delete it? You had the guts to send it, but you're afraid of me sharing it? If there's anyone in this city who hasn't seen this picture by tomorrow, it'll be a failure on my part as the ex-husband. Besides, Greg wasn't even on my friends list. So how did he see my post? Sarah hadn't contacted me, which meant Greg knew her password and had been scrolling through her feed. I turned off my phone, a spark of inspiration hitting me. I went to my art studio in the countryside and stayed there for 3 whole months. One of the paintings sold for a 7-figure price to a collector abroad. Mark took 2 other sketches with him. They were still for that school. I frowned slightly. "What are you doing?" He leaned on the windowsill, cupping his face in his hands. "You're a single widower, and I'm a single bachelor. Someone's got to take care of us when we're old. So I'm sponsoring a girl. Naturally, I want to give her the best education and have her look after us. She's definitely better than your biological kid." Widower. I couldn't even argue with that. As for the 2 sketches, it didn't really matter. Some people care more about who painted the picture than the picture itself. But I didn't know that for me, 3 months had flown by in an instant. For Sarah and Greg, every day was an eternity. Everyone knew Sarah had divorced her husband of 8 years for her first love. And as if that wasn't dramatic enough, people added their own embellishments to the story. They said Sarah had planned it all along, just waiting for Greg's case to be resolved so she could dump her original husband. Even her own son couldn't wait to call another man dad. This wasn't a drunken mistake, as they tried to explain, but a premeditated affair. And I, the devoted husband she left behind, became the sole victim. Sarah's career was more or less ruined. No male clients wanted to hire her, and female clients worried about their own families didn't want to get involved in the drama. There are a million lawyers out there. If one doesn't work, you just find another. Greg had it even worse. He lost his job. No parent wanted to leave their child in the care of a homewrecker. Someone in the parents' group chat openly ranted, "I don't care if my kid's grades are bad, but if his character is rotten, I'll have nowhere to cry." Exactly. If my kid turned out like that, I'd find an open casket for him myself. He's a teacher, a role model, but he has no morals. How can we trust him? Fire him. Yeah, they'll let any creep be a teacher these days. Us millennials might not like to get involved, but we're not dead. I thought that would be the end of it. But Greg made the fatal mistake of trying to sling mud back at me. He wrote a long, dramatic post about his love story with Sarah and published it on social media. He named me specifically, calling me the homewrecker. He claimed I took advantage of him being abroad to create misunderstandings that broke him and Sarah up, and that I had swooped in to become Mr. Sarah. The rumors spread like wildfire, and some extreme internet users started digging up my personal information. Even Mark called to warn me that if my identity was exposed, the consequences could be serious. It's one thing for James Cole to be labeled the other man, but Cole the artist can't be. I had always wondered why Greg's family, who believed so strongly in elite education that they worked hard to send him abroad to study, would be content with him being a preschool teacher. Now I knew. The world is full of people you just can't help. I gave Sarah one chance to step up and clear the air. She said, "James, I can't lose my career, and Danny can't have a mother with a ruined reputation." So Danny could have a father with a ruined reputation? I almost forgot he'd already chosen a replacement dad for himself. So I was the one who had to take the fall as the homewrecker. And I guess I had already anticipated her answer, so I wasn't too surprised. I just let out a soft sigh. A sigh for misplaced devotion. A sigh for the unpredictability of life. Mark threw a pile of photos at me and stared at me for a long time. "Why are you crying?" Crying? I raised a hand to my face. My fingertips were damp. "I guess I just feel sorry for the pathetic fool I used to be." Mark clapped me on the shoulder. "Stop arguing with them. Why can't you just sit down calmly and slap them both across the face? Here, this is your weapon from your brother." He sent me a bunch of photos of Sarah and Greg together, eating and staying over at his place before we were even divorced. There was also a 57-page PDF file, a timeline of my relationship with Sarah from dating to marriage. It included interviews with all our old classmates and friends, a precision strike against Greg's sob story. That afternoon, the trending topics online were completely reshuffled. Adults love to sacrifice themselves for the greater good. They bring it on themselves. When you were naming the man you fought tooth and nail to protect, were you thinking of your first love, or me waiting outside the operating room? Rot in hell, you cheaters. I'd curse the world. I'd curse God. I'd insult my ancestors and look down on everyone, but I wouldn't dare slap a scumbag. The crappier the car, the more spare tires it has. What a load of crap about finding his first love again. Which law firm? Which preschool? You're not telling us the important stuff, so how are we supposed to avoid them? How easy is it to destroy someone's hard work? Experts work for a year to improve marriage and birth rates, and all it takes is one little cheating story. Wishing this guy all the best on his own. Hope he gets his old swagger back. The next time I saw Sarah, it was outside that private elementary school. She looked haggard, not even bothering with her usual polished makeup. Her eyes were bloodshot, her dress wasn't even ironed, it was wrinkled and bunched up on her. Mark had come down with a fever, so he asked me to take the little girl he was sponsoring, Mia, to school. Danny stared nervously at the little girl whose hand I was holding, his eyes filled with hostility. "Mom, why is Dad holding her hand? Didn't you say Dad would always be my dad? She's the poorest kid in class. She doesn't even have a mom or dad. Didn't Uncle Greg say only little princesses and princes can go to this school? Why is she here?" Sarah didn't say anything, just looked at me. I knelt down and straightened Mia's clothes. "Mia, why don't you head inside for class? I'll be here to pick you up tonight." Before I could finish, several figures hurried out of the school gate. "Mr. Cole! Mr. Cole! I'm so glad to finally meet you!" It was the headmaster. They had heard I was coming today and had been waiting at the gate. It was as if something suddenly clicked for Sarah. Her eyes filled with utter disbelief. "The painter they were talking about is you? Danny is still on the wait list because you suddenly went back on your word?" I shrugged and denied it. I didn't go back on my word. I just changed who it was for. It was for the classmate Danny looked down on the most. "Dad, I don't even have a school to go to. Why are you helping someone else instead of me? You have to tell them to let me in. I'll still call you my dad." I looked at Danny quietly. He was looking more and more like Sarah. His personality, too. He thought he could summon me and dismiss me at will, and he'd gotten used to it. He glared at me, his eyes filled with a blatant threat. I took Mia's hand, my face blank. "You don't have to." Sarah's face changed drastically, and she blocked my path. "He's just a child. How can you say that to him?" I laughed. Just a child? A 6-year-old child who, in order to go out with his mom and his favorite teacher, put sleeping pills in his own father's milk. If he hadn't grabbed the effervescent tablets by mistake, I never would have found out. He was so defiant then. "I want Mr. Greg and Mom to take me out to play. I don't want Dad to come." I slapped him hard across the face. It was the first time I had ever hit him, and it hurt me more than if I had hit myself. From that day on, he completely distanced himself from me. The rare times I heard laughter from his room, it was always when he was on the phone with his Mr. Greg. More than once, when I brought him his milk, I heard him wishing to the Santa Claus toy I'd given him. "Please let Mr. Greg be my dad. I hate my dad now so much." Now his wish had come true, and somehow it was my fault. The headmaster looked at me awkwardly. "If this is your child, we can also—" "That won't be necessary." I led Mia through the school gates, not forgetting to remind the security guard, "Don't let any unauthorized people in." Behind me, all I could hear was the sound of Danny wailing, but I thought to myself, I can't let it bother me anymore. Life moved forward one day at a time. Now my life is more focused on my art. I often travel to clear my head and find inspiration. The vastness of 3.7 million square miles of land, the surge of 1.2 million square miles of sea. The turning of the seasons across heaven and earth, a magnificent symphony played by ice and fire. I followed explorers over mountains and through valleys, deep into the heart of the forest. I rode the wind and waves, chasing starlight into the deep blue. I plunged back into the world of mortals until I could see this poetic earth clearly. I used to think that mountains and seas were impassable, that the stars were unreachable, but I never imagined that the sea has boats to cross it, and the mountains have paths to climb. The mountains and seas can all be overcome. What's hard to overcome is the human heart. Now, the rest of my life is calm. The past is done. Sarah and her son could no longer affect me. Mark wanted to organize an exhibition for me, saying it was a way to give back to the fans who had waited for me for so many years. I agreed. Sarah came with Danny. They stood in the crowded room, and Danny was holding a small cake. He held the box carefully, afraid someone would bump into it. When he was just a few feet away, Danny shouted to me, his voice filled with a kind of innocent cheerfulness. "Dad, I made this cake myself. Mom and I came to celebrate with you." As if I hadn't heard a thing, I took Mia's hand and walked up to the podium. In this exhibition, a small section was dedicated to Mia's drawings. Her brushstrokes were childish but incredibly interesting. A child's boundless imagination is the most precious thing. I praised her creativity and acknowledged her talent and hard work. Sarah's lips were pressed into a thin line, an emotion on her face I couldn't decipher. Danny, however, was already crying, his red-rimmed eyes glaring at the people on stage. As I passed by Sarah and her son, Danny grabbed my hand tightly. He sobbed his accusations at me, utterly heartbroken. "Dad, I'm your real son. Why didn't you let me on stage? Why don't you teach me how to paint? Why don't you praise me?" I used some force, trying to pull my hand away. Sarah grew anxious and helped Danny hold on to my arm. "Don't be like this. Danny is your son. He needs you to comfort him right now." My son? Even if he is, it doesn't stop him from being an ungrateful brat. There was a time I would have sacrificed everything for this child. My career, my freedom, even myself. The first time he learned to say, "Dad," my eyes welled up. Every time he got a scrape or a bump, my heart ached beyond words. If he had asked for the stars in the sky, I would have wished I could grow wings and get them for him. But loving parents must plan for their child's future. I set many rules for him, hoping he would develop good habits. Kids will be kids, but Danny used to take my words to heart. Until Greg appeared in his life. Until he started wishing Greg could take my place. He changed completely. On a scorching summer day, the street cleaners were drenched in sweat. Danny casually tossed his water bottle on the ground as if he didn't see the trash can just a few feet away. I put on a stern face and told him to pick it up. "I'm not picking it up. Those beggars will fight over it anyway." "Who said they're beggars? They're people just like us, earning a living with their own two hands." Danny shoved me hard, his voice full of annoyance. "No, they're not. Mr. Gregg said as long as Mom has money, I'm different from the other kids. Dad is always so pathetic and poor. I don't want you to be my dad." In that moment, I realized that I had raised him for 6 years, disciplined him for 6 years, and it couldn't compare to 6 months of Gregg letting him do whatever he wanted. I shot them a cold glance. "Sorry, I don't have time. If you don't let go, I'm calling the police." They were escorted out of the exhibition hall. It suddenly started raining outside. Danny took off his jacket and covered the cake box with it. He kept looking up at me with a pitiful expression. I walked past without a second glance, a faint smile still on my face. Sarah took a couple of steps forward to call out to me, opened her mouth, but couldn't get a single word out, her lips trembling. I had just returned to the country when I heard that Sarah had been pushed down the stairs by Gregg and taken to the hospital. My phone was full of missed calls from her mother. She was a very simple farmer. When we got married, she gave me almost all of her life savings. Her hands trembled as she handed me the money in a cloth bag. "I don't really have anything nice to give you. I just hope my daughter will treat you well." Out of a strange sense of guilt toward her, I went to the hospital. Just as he despised me, Danny also hated his grandmother, but now he could only cling to the old woman's leg, sobbing uncontrollably. When he saw me, he cried even harder. I found the doctor to get a general idea of the situation. Sarah's injuries weren't serious, but she seemed completely uncooperative with the treatment. When I walked into her room, I saw a flicker of light in her eyes. She said with certainty, "James, I knew you wouldn't leave me to fend for myself." I frowned slightly, suppressing my irritation. "Sarah, do you think you seem particularly devoted right now?" Sarah was taken aback, then looked at me with a sincere expression. "No, James, with Gregg, it was really just about my pride. That day was your birthday. I was decorating the house to surprise you, but I didn't expect Gregg to show up. We got into an argument." I let out a bitter laugh and looked at her mockingly. "I haven't celebrated my birthday in 6 years. Ever since we had a child, I became the least important person in the family. What's a birthday? Sarah, you don't like me. You just think it's a shame to have lost me." The person on the hospital bed flinched and almost instinctively lowered her gaze. I ignored her and continued to expose her thoughts. "If you like strawberries, you'll buy them without a second thought. You don't like bananas as much, but you'll still buy them because they're good for digestion. Liking someone is just liking them. You don't weigh the pros and cons." At first, she just wasn't used to being without my meticulous care. Later, she realized I might be more capable than Gregg. Or maybe that little bit of pride she was holding on to was satisfied the moment Gregg came back to her. Sarah was like someone collecting seashells on the beach. When she found one she thought was better, she threw away the one she was holding without hesitation. When she realized the new one wasn't as good as the old one, she wanted to pick the old one back up. But we are people, not seashells. At the end of the day, you still care about Gregg. I already told you I don't like him anymore. Can we just let this go? Why do you keep bringing up the past? Oh, she's asking me why I keep bringing up the past? I looked at her steadily, speaking each word with emphasis. That's because the problem was never properly resolved. You selfishly asked me to be generous, and you pretended to be clueless to dismiss my pain. Sarah, you don't need me, and only me. You just think I'll soften up and waver, so you're trying to disgust me like this. Sarah tried to grab me, but the pain from her injuries caused her to fall pathetically off the bed. This was the second time I had seen her cry. The first was the day she and Greg broke up. Back then, I held my heart in my hands and tried to piece hers back together, terrified she wouldn't recover. Seeing her cry again now, I felt nothing at all. She pleaded with me through her tears. "James, give me one more chance. We have a child. We had a happy home. Please don't give up on me and our son so easily, okay?" "No, not okay at all. Save yourself some dignity, Sarah." Behind me, I heard cries of agony and the sound of fists hitting the floor. I closed the door decisively. There was no turning back. Bringing an umbrella after the rain has stopped is just a burden. The next time I heard about Sarah, she had already taken Danny and moved back to her hometown. I would send child support to her every month. I didn't neglect a single one of my duties. I just wouldn't love him the way I used to. Sarah would often send me pictures of Danny's report cards. He was always first in his class. One day, I got a call from Danny. He asked, "Dad, if I get first place lots and lots of times, will you come back?" 5-year-old Mia was putting clothes she'd outgrown into a bag to donate to people in need. I reminded her, "Sweetie, can you wait for Daddy to help you pack those up?" There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line, followed by Sarah's hesitant voice. "James, you're married again?" Only then did I remember I hadn't hung up the phone. "Yeah, our kid is already 5. Was there anything else you needed?" The call was abruptly disconnected. I knew that they would never bother me again. Mia is Mark's daughter, and I'm her godfather. But I didn't feel the need to explain. From then on, a bird and a fish walk different paths. Our worlds will never cross again. A little while later, Mark came back with the application materials for my master's program abroad. His eyes were red, and he gave me a shove, annoyed. "You're going back to school at your age? Isn't helping me raise my kid good enough?" I smiled and hugged him. "He's my favorite professor, and this is the first time he's accepting graduate students in 10 years. You should be congratulating me." Without Mark's support all these years, life would have been impossibly hard. His unwavering belief in me put a filter on everything, turning a not-so-great me into someone pretty decent. Okay. Here's to our James Cole, no longer a broken piece, but free to roam the world. To that, I nodded firmly. The road ahead is sure to be lined with one blossoming tree after another. I will finally stand tall on my own mountain peak after the spring rains have passed.